Oh man, do we have another controversy regarding the new Outdoors update indoors. Alright, so as you may be able to recall, in the last major update there was a massive uproar within the community regarding the insane rarity of the then new glitch fragment items, which can only have been obtained by getting lucky in an estimated 1 in 10,000 spawn chance. Now, we have another similar controversy on our hands. And although it isn't as big as the glitch fragment one, I still feel it is important to discuss, and that is the controversy surrounding the donut. The donut was one of the newest rare items added in the Outdoors update, and it's particularly notable for being extremely hard to obtain due to its incredibly low spawn chance. So what's the big deal? After all, Shadow is an extremely rare entity, so why is nobody complaining about them? Well, there's a reason why the donut has grown to be particularly hated in the Doors community, and that's what I want to discuss in today's video. Today, we'll be going over the entire donut controversy indoors, including my own thoughts on the situation. So, with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so to start, I should probably give a basic rundown of what the donut is. With the release of the Outdoors update, both the hotel and the mines can now have rift rooms spawn inside of them. These are incredibly rare side rooms, usually ranging from 0 to 2, with an emphasis on 0 spawning per playthrough. These rooms can only be unlocked with a skeleton key, and each variant contains a rift players can use, acting as a way for players to save items midway through their runs rather than at the very beginning or very end. The interesting thing is, though, these rift rooms have variants, and some are better than others. For example, in addition to spawning a typical rift, the abandoned Jeff shop room also contains a tip jar item, which can be converted into a rift jar, which essentially acts as a portable rift that can be placed at any time. The donut is a rather powerful healing item that can be obtained in a similar way as the tip jar, as it can only spawn in one of these rift room variants. The issue is, the exact room it spawns in is absurdly hard to come across. Every time a rift room spawns in the hotel, it can generate as one of 3 variants. I've already discussed the abandoned Jeff shop, but the other 2 are the mini electrical room and the cafe. These variants don't have an equal chance of appearing though, as the cafe specifically is far rarer to encounter than the other 2 variants. The cafe also happens to be the room which contains the donut, meaning finding this room is the only way to get the item. This is where the main issue of rarity players have been complaining about arises from. Not only do you need to be extremely lucky to even get a rift room to spawn, which as I've said happens in not too many playthroughs, but you also have to be even more lucky to get the insanely rare cafe variant that houses the donut. Now, Doors isn't a stranger to rare occurrences. After all, as I've said, look at Shadow, they have a 1 in 2,000 spawn chance in each room, yet nobody complains about them. What makes the donut so special where it's causing the game to face this controversy? Well, it's for one main reason. Finding the donut rewards a badge. Doors' main progression goes like this. You beat the main floors and the subfloors, then you try to obtain every badge in the game. That's just how the progression of the game works. Players try to fulfill all the predetermined goals in order to complete the game. This makes badges very important to completionists, a group of people that encompasses the most dedicated players, including myself. So I think you could see the issue of having this badge being locked behind the alignment of 2 incredibly rare events. In the case of Shadow, given how no badge is tied to them, players don't mind their rarity as it doesn't directly affect their playthrough of the game. The donut on the other hand does, and given how no skill but an insane amount of luck is required to obtain the badge, it makes sense why players wouldn't be too happy about it. Now this raises another question. Why are players complaining about the donut but not something like Timothy, who is also an incredibly rare entity? Well, that ties into the second point I want to make, and that is discovering rare things by playing naturally, not by grinding them out. Timothy, although having an insanely low 1 in 200 spawn chance, is almost guaranteed to appear in everyone's playthrough simply due to how they fit into the rest of the progression. Timothy spawns exclusively in containers, and given how players are required to open hundreds of them throughout their entire playthrough, it's very likely they'll encounter them at least once. Another example of something similar to this would be the document system in Pressure. For those unaware, in Pressure, a Doors-inspired game, players can rarely find collectibles known as documents. However, it's never really a grind to get them, as they are like Timothy in the sense where players can naturally find all of them throughout playing the game normally. Now, don't get me wrong, this argument of naturally finding rare stuff throughout the playthrough could be applied to the donut, However, that's only the case if we are talking about new players. For much of the community who has already completed the entire game, or at least much of the hotel, obtaining the donut is just a grindy snooze fest. Going back to Pressure's document system, they typically release a new rare document when the gameplay associated with them receives an update. So when any type of player, new or old, is experiencing the update, they can still naturally find the rare stuff. In the case of the Outdoors update, although the hotel did see some improvements, the focus was of course the outdoor subfloor, and there wasn't really any main reason for players to check out the hotel other than to see the handful of new rooms that were added. This means it's almost certain veteran completionists of the game have to go grinding for the donut in order to obtain the badge, and given how low its spawn rate is, it just makes the whole process not that fun. So how can it be fixed? Well, I feel there is a way to make both players and developers happy in this donut situation. The Doors developers have repeatedly stated their interest in adding rare stuff to the game, and although that's completely fine for most editions, such as Shadow, just understand that if it is tied to a badge, then there's probably going to be a little backlash. So how do we minimize that backlash or just outright remove it? One method is simply tucking in the rare stuff into the other new content or new progression. For example, when the content update was released, players had to obtain the green soda item in order to receive a badge. This item can only be obtained rarely from Louis. However, other non-rarity related badges in the game already requires players to interact with Louis, leading to the attainment of the green soda item and its respective badge being grind-free. In the context of the donut, if it had spawned in the Outdoors, the new location players are constantly going through, rather than in the hotel, it would have received less hate, as players would naturally find it. That's not a change I want to see currently, as the donut has already been established in the hotel, but that advice could be useful for future rare items. There's also the option of minimizing the rarity variables of the item in the badge. For example, what if one rift room was always guaranteed to spawn in a playthrough, so that way some runs aren't just completely absent from them. That way players still need to get lucky to get the correct rift room variant, but it's not as much as rarity based as it once was. Anyways, I just wanted to go over this, in all seriousness, minor controversy indoors, as well as my own opinions about it. Don't get me wrong, I think the idea of rare stuff indoors is really interesting. It just needs to be executed a little better so it doesn't feel incredibly grindy for completionists to obtain badges related into them, as despite not seeming that way, badges are very important to the progression of the game. As I said, some solutions to fix that problem are fitting the rare items into the new progression all types of players, new and old, will experience, or just make them less rare. Anyways, with all of that being said, let me know in the comments what you think of this whole donut controversy, as well as what you think the developers should do regarding rare items in the future. As although I think my suggestions are cool, I wonder what your guys' ideas are. And thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.